Welcome to day 24 of our tarot journey, and we are continuing with the Minor Arcana suits, and today our suit is the Swords, which I know many people find intimidating, scary and dark, and perhaps not surprisingly they contain darkness. They absolutely contain darkness, because the cards reflect life. They reflect all of the ups, all of the downs, all of the in-betweens, and therefore the swords can feel deeply challenging. Cards that we like to avoid. But the thing I would say about the swords is they cut to the chase. They cut through our difficulties, our own personal bullshit, honestly. They cut through the layers of silt that have been kind of placed upon us by society and culture, and by being versions of ourselves that are not true. And they take things that have been difficult within our existence and they begin to wield them as power, or allow us to wield them as power, or to chop them away, or to grow and evolve. They are in fact a beautiful suit, albeit tumultuous. And if you look at those two cards, a little scary, but each one of these represents the power that lies beneath the pain. And that's what I think of with the swords. They represent air. They represent the intellectual. They represent our thoughts. And gosh, our thoughts can be difficult, can't they? One day we can be on top of the world, happy, clear, feeling great, and then perhaps a huge dose of hormones later, the next morning we awake feeling like the world is against us. And it can change from day to day. And of course, many of us will have struggled with mental health difficulties or very difficult life situations that have in turn led to mental health difficulties. And the swords really help us find a way through these traumas, these confused patternings of how we see the world. And so the tarot, all of those 78 cards combined, give us gifts. They give us reflections that relate to something that is inevitably true. So we're not predicting that life is suddenly going to become all 10 of swords, but rather when a card like this arises, we're thinking life is already all 10 of swords. Where's the light? Because it's never just death and destruction and decay. It's never just that. Life does not just stall at a place like that. We can always find the steps forward, the evolution, if we release and we release. And that's really what the swords do. They come in and they cut. So you think about what a sword represents. What does a sword represent to you? When you think of a sword, it's not an item we see a lot in our lives. We might think about knives. Perhaps we use knives every day to eat with, to cut food with. Very sharp knives for certain chopping activities. But beyond that, we don't often see swords. So when we think of swords, what do we think of? We think of defense, attack, maybe. We think of cutting down something that no longer serves. Obviously, traditionally, that might be the enemy. It might be another human. But what parts of your human require to be cut away? Not literally, of course, metaphorically. What aspects of you dwell within that are ready to be sliced through and released? Because that's where the swords bring us to. They bring us to this beautiful position of recognizing what is harming us. And then we wield our giant magical sword to release it back to the universe for transmutation, and we transform at the same time. You know, and the cards will always reflect the difficulties of life, which are many and relentless. So when we have a card that reflects that, then we can know that we are held, that we are understood, that there is some third party here saying to us, yeah, life's really tough right now. It's really tough right now. And perhaps we went to the cards looking for comfort, but sometimes that comfort is just found in the reflection of this third party, these pieces of card telling us the absolute truth of how we feel. It's like, what is this middleman? What is this magical, spiritual, divine, godlike being that is putting these intervening between me and my cards and telling me the truth of what I already know. Like, how does this happen? And it happens, as I've said before, relentlessly and over and over and over again. Each person's cards are completely unique and perfect to them, which can be a frustration when it's a dark card. You know, I've lived through periods of time in my life when I've really not been happy with the cards I've been dealt. And I'll go back and I'll deal them again. And you know what? They'll say the same thing. Maybe with different cards, a slightly different version, but they'll say the same thing. And if I do that over weeks and months during a difficult period, the same cards will arise over and over and over again. So if you're getting lots and lots of swords, what do you need to cut out? What do you need to change? What do you need to release? Where do you need to grow? How can you evolve? How can you use the pains within, the traumas within, to step forward into something greater? And how do you intellectually get to a point of doing that? Because this is a thought. It all takes thought. We can have intuitions and we can have feelings and we can act upon them, but it's the mind that acts upon them. It's the mind that finally decides enough is enough, and, you know, speaks to a friend, calls a doctor, gets a therapist, goes to a shaman, has some Reiki, whatever it is, you know, goes for a walk to clear your head. It's the mind that eventually has to do that ultimate processing. So the swords are almost like in connection and collaboration with all these other aspects, but they're then the action, the choice, the moment of, okay, let's do something differently, and then chopping down to create that ultimate change, which can lead to so many benefits and empowerments. So as usual with your sword cards, I'd like you to separate all of your sword cards out and lay them out in a line and just have a look, just gently look across. What's the story being told? If you look at them as a comic book, what can we learn from Ace through to King? What journey is, if you were to look at it as your life, like, okay, so I'm starting at Ace and I'm going through, what journey have I undertaken and where do I need to go and what choices do I need to make to get to that kingly ownership position? And where do you feel that you are sat on the swords today? That's a tricky one, isn't it? Oh, yes. And, you know, one day you could be the Three of Swords and the next, oh, I don't know, the Queen. But it takes the three with all that heartache to kind of empower and embolden you to step forward into something like the Queen. But when you look across them today, what story is being told and which one feels like you for today? Which is your sword card for today? Where is your general intellectual understandings at? And what does the card that you feel called to tell you about what you might need to do to feel better or to harness power? Okay, so I hope everybody is continuing to pull another card, a general card for the day from their deck, and to think about it, to journal on it. Again, pop it into the comments. I would love to hear how these cards are interacting with your days, how they are meeting up with your circumstances, how are they being reflected, like literally, or maybe even just metaphorically. Please do share this with the group, as I'm sure you are doing, and I cannot wait to move on a little more with the swords tomorrow. See you then.